Good morning and thanks for tuning in. You're watching All You Need to Know on BloombergQuint Live and I'm Alex Matthew. First, the headlines. Uddhav Thackeray will be sworn in as the 19th Chief Minister of Maharashtra at Shivaji Park this evening. NCP gets the Deputy Chief Minister's post, while the Speaker will be from the Congress. 3 directors of Zee Entertainment resigned on Tuesday, citing related party loans, film advances, and that's among other issues as the reasons. RBL Bank will hold a board meeting on Saturday to consider raising funds. Remember, BloombergQuint had broken this exclusive story on Wednesday afternoon. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman tells Parliament that even though India's growth has slowed, the economy will never slip into a recession. And Asian markets pair early gains after US President Donald Trump signs a bill supporting the protesters in Hong Kong. And we're going to deal with several of those stories, but before we do, let's talk about the US markets. They continue to post record highs, a streak that was extended on Wednesday. Sentiment was boosted after the third quarter GDP data and unemployment claims beat analyst forecasts. Abigail Doolittle of Bloomberg News wraps up Wednesday's Wall Street action in this report.
It was another day of record highs for stocks in Wednesday's Wall Street session, the day before the Thanksgiving holiday in the U.S., and it also was a day of more record highs for the Dow, the S&P 500, the NASDAQ. The Dow finished higher by a little more than 0.1%. The S&P 500 up about 0.4%. The outperformer tech, or that NASDAQ, up almost 0.7%, really being helped out by the chip sector, up about the same amount. Small cap had a good day as well, at a 52-week high, up 0.6%. The Dow Transports, the outlier, down about 0.2%. So clearly stocks were higher on the day, the bulls charging forward, even though the volume was super light ahead of that Thanksgiving holiday. But to the bullish side of the ledger, 10 of the 11 S&P 500 sectors were higher, led by consumer discretionary, plus the bond rally that's been going on. Pause for a day, so that's risk on. We have stocks higher, bonds lower. Relative to some of the big movers beneath the surface, Deere down 4.3%. This after the farm machinery company offered an outlook that was disappointing. We also had the shares of Dell down quite a bit, down 5.5% after they had to cut their outlook, saying that there are Intel chip shortages affecting them. To the upside, though, Under Armour, the athletic retail brand company, those shares popping higher by 6.4% after Raymond James upgraded shares to a strong buy, with the analysts there saying that valuation is attractive and there are fewer risks ahead. Overall, somewhat quiet day on the Wednesday before the Thanksgiving holiday in the U.S., but one that did bring more record highs. And again, with bonds lower, stocks higher, it was a risk-on session. From New York, Abigail Doolittle, Bloomberg News.
All right, let's also take a look at the Asia-Pacific region. I'm joined live by Rosalind Chin, who's joining me from the Bloomberg studios in Hong Kong. Good morning, Rosalind. How are we looking in the Asia-Pacific region, and specifically in Hong Kong? I believe there are concerns about extreme volatility there.
That's right. The Hang Seng Index right now is trading down by about 0.33%, and that is after President Trump signed the Hong Kong bill, which would basically mean the U.S. has to review Hong Kong's special trading status every single year. Now, of course, this is something related to the protests. Trump saying that he wanted to show support for Hong Kong protesters. China, of course, has not taken this lightly at all. In fact, in the last couple of minutes, it's come out with a response to Trump's signing of the bill, saying that it's threatening to retaliate. The Hong Kong bill severely meddles in China's internal affairs, also saying that the U.S. move severely violates international law, and says it will retaliate, but it hasn't offered any details on how or what it might do in order to retaliate. So we are waiting for more lines on that to come out. At the same time, of course, investors are doing the same. A little bit of nervousness around what might happen, and also what might happen to this trade deal that has been so long in coming, that perhaps potentially was had been showing signs of progress, reaching perhaps a stage at which it might be signed, a phase 1 deal at least. Now this, of course, putting a huge spanner in those works. So overall, we did see a pretty quiet morning this morning. We saw, generally speaking, across Asia, the stocks were on the rise, making modest gains after the US, but right now all turning lower. So the MSCI Asia Pacific Index is losing 0.1%. Hang Seng, as I mentioned, trading lower now by 0.4%. Shanghai Composite opened little change, but now also dipping to negative territory, down by more than 0.1%. Japan, the Nikkei is just about flat. The Topix losing just under 0.1%. We had some data out from Japan showing retail sales plunging. They were down 14.4% in the month of October. Now, there was a sales tax hike earlier in the month and also a big typhoon, which of course didn't really encourage shoppers to get out. But it is an important consideration because right now the Abe administration is looking at a stimulus package, and of course it will largely look at things like consumer spending to determine the size of that package. Consumer spending taking on a particular importance given the current issues with global trade, the tensions, and also cooling demand for technology items which are weighing on exports there. So right now, Japan just about flat but dipping into negative territory. And over in Australia, the S&P ASX 200, that is actually making gains, up by more than 1/3. The biggest movers there include communication and healthcare stocks. Back to you.
Thanks so much for that, Rosalind. Now, I do want to talk a little bit more about what Rosalind started with, which is the Hong Kong issue. It's a move that may further strain relations between the US and China. President Donald Trump signed into law a bill that supports the protesters in China, and this is likely to prompt a retaliation from Beijing and further complicate recent efforts to resolve the trade war between the two countries. Danton Kate of Bloomberg News has more details.
He didn't have much of a choice. It would have taken effect either way, really. Congress basically unanimously supported this. So for him, it was either he vetoes it, which politically, gives the Democrats a line of attack, or he signs it. And if you saw when he did sign it, he said, certain things we might, I have the discretion not to implement. And he also said he had a lot of respect for Xi Jinping. So he was trying to signal at the same time, look, let's not derail trade talks with this. I mean, reading between the lines there. So now it all depends how China reacts. China knew this was coming. They knew the president had his hands tied. This was going to become law either way. And so now the question is, how does China respond? Unlikely that they'll hit back. They'll definitely scream and shout. Whether they're going to take any concrete action is a big question. We saw the U.S. go after officials in Xinjiang earlier this year. This bill is somewhat connected to that. It allows sanctions that weren't there previously. The rest of it is pretty similar to what the president can do already. So from that aspect, it's more, what does this mean for markets? What does this mean for the trade deal?
Yeah, Dan, I mean, you touched on this a little bit, but in terms of the mechanics then of this bill, does the review process start immediately? And what are the prospects then of sanctions in the short to medium term?
Yeah, I mean, the U.S. State Department already reviews Hong Kong's autonomy every year. They issue a report. This calls for a certification, so it'll definitely up the ante, and every year this will become more of a political issue. But this is not something the U.S. already doesn't look at constantly as far as the reviews of whether Hong Kong is sufficiently autonomous from China. The president, in fact, if he wanted to tonight, could just pull the whole thing. So he already has that power. Regardless of this bill. So the big question now is, how does China respond to that?
All right, let's look at what else is making headlines across the globe. Sue Keenan of Bloomberg News brings you the First Word headlines.
The sterling strengthened as that YouGov poll suggested the Conservative Party may win a comfortable majority in next month's UK election. The survey of 50,000 voters sees the Tories winning 359 seats to Labour's 211. However, a top aide to UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson is warning of a possibility of a hung parliament. Dominic Cummings says there's a very real chance of no overall victory and that things are much tighter than they seem. Meanwhile, the latest Fed survey of the U.S. economy shows, quote, modest growth through mid-November with steady consumer spending and some bright spots in manufacturing. The Beige Book strikes a slightly more upbeat tone than it did back in October, and it affirms the Fed's general outlook for moderate expansion. It also says more regions reported growth this month than last, although there were a lot of regions that saw no growth at all. And finally, Apple is under fire from Ukraine after changing some versions of its Maps app to depict Crimea as being part of Russia. Ukraine's foreign ministry and the embassy in Washington tweeted that the area is actually under Russian occupation and its sovereignty has not legally changed. The more widely used Google Maps has a dotted line as the boundary between Ukraine and Crimea, indicating the situation is not clear. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok, on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Sue Keenan. This is Bloomberg.
All right, let's turn to the Indian markets now, and Agam Vakil is joining me now to tell you all about the trade setup for the day and also what's happening in the futures and options space. First of all, I have a message for you from one of our viewers. Ashutosh Tilak says to say good morning and hello, and thank you so much for the trade setup. He wants to know how the markets are likely to fare. So I said that we should wait till Agam gives you the trade setup.
Yeah, well, that's a tough one. It always has been the toughest question I can answer. And I don't have an answer for that, actually. But for now, what we are keeping an eye on is some amount of slackness, because we have a lot of polarizing views in this case, because there are some who suggest that there very well could be an upward move on the Nifty, and there are some who are very, very cautious at this point in time, expecting the markets to be very stressed, and then thereby expecting the markets to come off. For now, the SGX Nifty is down by around 0.3%, not too much to go by in terms of indication. But let's take a look at how markets have done well yesterday. We did see an advance. In fact, the Nifty closing at record highs. Mid-cap and small-cap indices also were moving in tandem, largely, at least as far as the mid-cap index is concerned. The banking indices also doing well in yesterday's day of trade, with gains of around nearly 2% as far as the Nifty PSU Bank is concerned. But what about the ADRs? How are they doing today? So we do have advances in Tata Motors, ICICI Bank, Vedanta, and some some prominent up move cars coming in. Let's talk about the other set of gainers. All right, so we just have those. But what was also, I mean, of course, the gross numbers for FIs and DIs weren't very large, because the rollover rather the turnover itself wasn't very large. But for now, 43 odd crores to nets buy number for FIs, 440 odd crores of net buy number for DIs. Moving on, let's talk about contributors. HDFC, Reliance Industries, SBI, HUL, all advancing and keeping the indices buoyant. And coming down to futures and options, again, an important day perhaps, considering it is expiry. Rollover standing at 63%. The Bank Nifty rollover standing at around, nearly 50%. What we've also seen is in terms of change in open interest, 12,000 put is the one with the max OI. And of course, in terms of the call side, we are looking at accumulation around 12,100, 12,200, and that'll be evident in the change in open interest. That should come up on your screen. So 12,100 put is, of course, seeing a little more writing coming through. Moving on, in terms of the WIX, that's come off even further to around 1.5. And we also have the Nifty put call ratio edging up higher to around 1.6. And in terms of stocks, we are keeping an eye on Yes Bank, where, of course, the rollovers, it's still in the F&O band. We have seen an overall unwinding in Yes Bank, but it's still seeing some sort of unwinding coming through rollovers. RBL Bank, of course, also looking at accumulation towards longs. We have Equitas Holding, which has done very well, also seeing advances with buying coming through. And Lawson and Tubro, on the other hand, across all series, we're seeing a decline. Of course, Rollo standing at around 83%. But mixed cues, Alex, most of them, the financial sector and a handful of auto names did very well. But the real question is, can the indices hold on to the strength?
Thanks so much for that, Agam. All right, well, let's talk about individual stocks now. Darshan Mehta is joining me to tell you all about the stocks in news. Good morning, Darshan. What are you talking about today?
Yeah, so let's start with Z Entertainment, and what has happened is 3 of their directors had resigned, and the company clarified on the reasons why these directors had resigned. So first of all, the board had also said that they have noted all the issues raised by the resigning directors, and some of the issues that were raised by the directors included, advances, CSR spends, related party issues, outstanding by the group company. So these are some of the issues. He probably will react on this news. RBL Bank bank, that probably will react on the positive side. There's a board meeting on November 30th for fundraising plan, and that will be fundraising via a preferential issue. So that is something that is positive. Remember, yesterday we did this story and the counter was up almost 6%. BSE has approved sale of 41.8 lakh shares in CDSL. Remember, BSE holds a significant stake in CDSL. They're selling shares at a discount of almost 8%. So that is positive for BSE. Enkai Wheels, they've increased the expansion capex from 125 crores to 230 crores. Schneider Electric Infra will be in focus. They have launched is Bengaluru factory for the manufacture of industrial UPS systems and variable speed drives. Jet Airways, the last date for submission of resolution plan has been now postponed to December 16. IIFL Securities, Sunil Singhania's Abacus Group has acquired 2.7% stake in the company, and Lemon Tree, in which WF Asian Fund has bought in 1.2% stake. RJ Corp is the seller in the stock.
Thanks so much for that, Darshan. Now, let's shift gears and talk about, JSW Cement. Tight market conditions have prompted JSW Cement to delay their 20 MTPA, that's million tons per annum capacity targets by a year. It has also delayed its impending IPO to December 2021 from December 2020. Nikki Mirchandani spoke to JSW Cement's Parth Jindal on their inorganic acquisition as well as capex plans going ahead. Listen in.
Currently, where we stand today, JSW Cement is a 14 million ton cement company, and our stated target was to become a 20 million ton cement company by 2020. Given the economic situation and given the slowdown that we have all witnessed over the last 6 months, those plans have been pushed by about 12 months. So JSW Cement is now going to become a 20 million ton cement company by 2021. Having said that, in a very positive development, as you rightly put it, JSW Cement and our subsidiary Shiva Cement has emerged as a preferred bidder for a very large limestone mine, which is adjacent to the existing Shiva Cement mine. With that, our entire limestone reserves in the east, in the eastern part of India, goes to about 100 million tons. So now we are commencing our project of putting up a 1 million ton clinkerizing unit and a 1 million ton grinding unit at Shiva Cement. With that, security of clinker, we are able to now further expand. So that is why our targets of 20 million, we are revising upwards to 25 million. And we would hope to achieve that by end of calendar year 2022. That is the targets for the company.
Okay, the last time we spoke, you said that you'd like to be a 20 million ton company before you go for an IPO. And like you said that the plan has been now delayed by a year. By virtue of that, we're now looking at an IPO timeline of around what for that matter?
So we would be looking, so even our IPO plans would get pushed out by about 12 months. So earlier we were looking to come into the market in December of 2020. We were looking to do our listing by then. Now we would be looking at doing our listing by December 2021. So it's about a 12-month delay. And the metric for us is still 20 million tons. Although we have revised our targets upwards to 25 million tons, we would like to give that upside to the investor community and to all the people who subscribe to our shares, that the company has very clear visibility to go to 25 million tons in a very short time period, which would give increased earnings to the company. So that is why for us the IPO has been delayed by 12 months. So we were very much on track till about 6 months ago, and then we've had to put a lot of our projects on hold, right, because of the economic climate.
You also spoke about inorganic capacity expansion. So I wanted to understand the change in your stance, because the last time we spoke to you, you said that you were just going to be looking at just the organic route expansion and not the inorganic one. So what has led to change of this? If you can throw some names, if that's difficult, then what's the kind of region that you're looking at in that case?
No, so what I wanted to highlight was that the entire expansion plan that I've charted out is only on the organic side. Right. Now, if an inorganic opportunity that fits our requirements comes into the market and it's available, we would be very keen on looking at it. There are a lot of names and a lot of speculation going around. Imami Cement, there's a lot of chatter that that is that's on the block.
So we have bid for it.
No, we have not bid for it. We looked at it. We studied it very, very closely. What we realized with Imami Cement was that their assets are overlapping with ours. They have a clinkerizing unit in Baloda Bazar in Chhattisgarh, and then they have a grinding unit in Odisha, very close to our existing grinding unit. Right. They have a grinding unit in Bengal, very close to our existing grinding unit. So it was a overlap in terms of the asset footprint. So that is why we decided not to look at it or not to bid aggressively for it. There are several companies vying for it because they do have a very good geographical presence. Right. There are others also. There's talk about assets available in the west of the country as well. For us, we are very clear that we would be very keen on looking at assets in the central and in the western part of the country. So as of now, nothing has really come up which has excited us or which really fits into what we in our current state can really afford. But if anything does come up, we would definitely look at it because it would give us help us achieving a increased output at a much faster time period than what I have outlined in our plans.
Turning to the economy now, in the Rajya Sabha, the Rajya Sabha discussed the state of the economy for over 4 hours yesterday. Several opposition leaders questioned the government's action or the lack of it in tackling the slowdown faced by the economy. In her reply, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman put up a bold front, stating on the floor of the House that the economy will never slip into recession. Here are a few highlights from that discussion.
इतनी बार चेंजेस करनी पड़ी जीएसटी के रेट पे। आप जो 70 साल की बात करते हैं, जो 70 साल में इस देश ने पूंजी बनाई, आज ग्रैंड क्लियरेंस सेल की योजना होती है, कैबिनेट के फैसले हो जाते हैं। प्रॉफिट मेकिंग PSUs will be sold, not disinvested, will be sold.
Let's put this government to the test of the trust quotient. 1, are they trusted by their people in their own party or in their own organization? National Register of Citizens came, sir. 19 lakh people have been left out. 11 lakh Indian citizens, 11.5 lakh Bengali Hindus, and others of 8 lakh from Biharis, Gurkhas, everyone. Own organization from their branch in Assam is objecting to that work done. Do your allies trust you? So this I don't need to say much because all of us have followed very carefully 29-year-old relationship and what happened. And the no confidence motion a few months ago also came from their biggest ally. Does industry trust you? Hasty GST, we supported you with GST, we warned you about implementation. Now what has happened? Trader segment, 43% down. Micro segment, 32% down. 35% down in the small business and 24% in the medium business. This is a very nice public statement which was made. Economy is in trouble. Youth want jobs. Devote more time to economics, not to petty politics. Please focus on the job at hand. Unquote. Economy is in trouble. Youth want jobs. Devote more time to economics, not petty politics. Please focus on the job at hand. My request to you is, through you, sir, to the Prime Minister, is to take heed of this advice given to all of us by the former Chief Minister of Gujarat in November 2013. Self-advice is always the best advice.
No economy in the world has grown on the back of FDI. I would request the Honorable Finance Minister, give up the obsession with FDI and focus on DI. Forget the F. Forget on DI, direct investment, domestic investment. Forget the F, because it is that DI that is going to take the economy out of the woods.
Is the Indian economy doing well in the eyes of the global community investors? Yes.
In first quarter itself, we got about 50% of total FDI, which we got last year. Chairman, sir, look at the Sensex. Again, put your money where your mouth is. It shows the confidence of the people of India, Mr. Jairam Ramesh, in the Indian economy.
Growth may have come down, but it's not a recession yet, or it won't be a recession ever. And therefore, yes ma'am, I did say that. Between 2014 and 19, the GDP accelerated 7.4% in 14-15, 8% in 15-16, 8.2 in 16-17, before the lagged effect of the twin balance sheet set in. And as a result, private investment started suffering because the NPAs were still alive in the banks. They didn't have additional money to go on investing further. So the lagged effect of declining investment caught on, and therefore the GDP growth rate came down to 7.2% in 17-18 and 6.8 in 18-19. And I also recognize that in the first quarter of 19-20, clearly the decline is very pronounced. We are able to see that. A government which many of us do recall in 91, and even very many of us do refer to the reformative steps taken by Dr. Manmohan Singh at that time. Globalization, opening up of the economy, more reforms. And in fact, between 2014 and 19, we were constantly questioned, where are your reforms? This time too, where are your reforms? Take lessons from Dr. Manmohan Singh. Surely, sir. Surely, why not? But they are the ones who are now condemning corporate tax reduction, saying सूट बूट के सरकार को दे रही हो. Globalization करने वाले कौन है सर? कौन ओपन किया इकोनॉमी को? क्यों किया? वो तब ठीक है, अब ये ठीक नहीं है. ये कहां से? I mean, what is this hypocrisy, sir? 32 steps were taken by me. I can leave it on the table of the House. Every step that is pertaining to different sectors, whether it is MSME, whether it is banks, and so on. So 32 steps were taken across the board, which I review on a weekly basis, and many of which are showing definite results.
All right, you'll find more details from that session in the Rajya Sabha on the website BloombergQuint.com. But there are also several other stories that you'll find if you go online right now. Aviation Minister Hardeep Singh Puri has said that Air India will have to shut down if renewed attempts to sell the debt-laden airline fail to find a buyer. Puri's comments in Parliament come a year and a half after the attempt to sell the airline flopped. The Union Cabinet has extended the term of the 15th Finance Commission to submit its final report covering its suggestions for the 5 years starting financial year 2021-22 by the 30th of October next year. The Commission would submit an interim report soon covering its suggestions for the next financial year so that these can be used for the next year's budget. And that's all you need to know going into trade today, but do stay tuned. There's of course a lot to talk about even over the next couple of hours. This is Bloomberg Quint.